6 years. 6 years is the development time we were told that Anthem had, and for some reason, over the last few months, even before launch, I never believed it. As many of you are aware, there was an article released by gaming journalism veteran Jason Schreier that depicted Anthem's development and brought to light a slew of things that went wrong or happened that led to Anthem being in its current state. I was quite honestly sick to my stomach after reading this article, but I am grateful for the reporting. And to Jason, my hat is off to you. With that said, my name is William, and in today's video we are going to be addressing the Kotaku article, Bioware's response, and my own thoughts on Anthem's development. Something that shot up red flags from the beginning of the article was, well, the beginning of the article, which points out Anthem wasn't even meant to be called Anthem initially. It was meant to be called Beyond. Now hold on a second. You may be asking yourself, isn't the Anthem of Creation such an integral part of the game? Well, this was due to a difficulty of licensing and trademarking by EA, which admittedly I understand. But to change the name a few days before E3 2017 when it was first announced to the world, red flags are already sailing and we aren't even past the first two paragraphs. And yeah, that's right, I said before E3 2017. A few weeks before E3 2017 to be exact. Throughout the article, Jason quotes 19 people who worked on Anthem, who remain anonymous for obvious reasons, and apparently such an uprooting and random change was pretty commonplace for Anthem. But things go so much further than that. As Jason puts it, Anthem's story is, well, a story of indecision and mismanagement. It's a story of technical failings, as EA's Frostbite engine continues to make life miserable for many of BioWare's developers, and understaffed departments struggle to serve their team's needs. It's the story of two studios, one in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and the other in Austin, Texas, that grew resentful towards one another thanks to tense, lopsided relationship. It's a story of a video game that was in development for nearly 7 years but didn't enter production until the final 18 months, thanks to big narrative reboots, major design overhauls, and a leadership team said to be unable to provide a consistent vision and unwilling to listen to feedback. But worse still, it was a story of many developers in mental crisis as a result of stress, anxiety, and overall mental health. Obviously, we are not going to be going over the entire article. You can read the article for yourself if you want to, but these were just the major bullet points, in my opinion, that we're going to be going over. Now, what if I told you Anthem was supposed to have a completely different story? I had planned on doing a video on what Anthem's story was originally supposed to be after reading the Art of Anthem book, which sounded pretty amazing. You crash-landed in the Bermuda Triangle of the galaxy on this unknown world filled with hostile aliens, and in order to survive, you would need to build an exosuit to defend yourself and the humanity settlements around you. Pretty cool, right? Well, that was the idea behind Project Dylan. You may have heard me reference this name before in videos last year where I recounted Anthem's development. Obviously, I didn't know the full story. According to Schreier, however, as to why it was named Project Dylan was because Casey Hudson and BioWare really wanted it to be, quote, the Bob Dylan of video games, meaning something that would be referenced by video game fans for years to come. I doubt that they expected it to be referenced like this, though. And to fit this theme of Dylan's original story, as mentioned a few moments ago, Anthem was meant to be a multiplayer survival game, not a looter shooter. Earlier in the piece, Jason assures us that it wasn't EA demanding the studio make their version of Destiny. This was 100% BioWare's doing. Though this is to be expected in a developmental cycle. Things get added, changed, worlds are rebuilt, scaled down, scaled up, and so on. Eventually, Casey Hudson left and handed the project over to John Warner, Anthem's current game director. Now, this is where things get interesting from a story perspective. David Gator, who many of you know from Dragon Age, became a writer for Anthem in early 2015. His ideas for the game's story was more of a science fantasy and Dragon Age-esque thing, which was not a compliment according to many who worked on the team. He eventually left, and the story was completely rebooted in 2016, which raises my eyebrow a bit and may explain a few things that I'll make a separate video on in the future story-wise. Another flaw with Anthem appeared to be with its leadership, which comprised of John Warner, Preston Wanamaker, Derek Watts, and Parrish Lay, along with a few other BioWare vets. Sounds like a pretty great group to me, but apparently there was a lot of contempt for the leadership according to one of the 19 Jason interviewed. They were always looking for something more, something new. I think most people on the team felt like we didn't know exactly what the game was or what it was supposed to be because it kept changing so much. What's worse, the indecisiveness would keep Anthem in a constant state of flux, which hurt the development even more. And when a decision on a mechanic, lore feature, or element was made, it would often take weeks, if not months, to implement. This was the disaster known as the years of 2015 to 2016. But there was another reason for that, chiefly the Frostbite engine, which near all EA studios utilizes these days. One of my favorite lines from the entire article is, quote, "Frostbite is full of razor blades," according to one of the former developers. This was apparently an initiative by EA to get all of its studios on board with the same technology. However, it would have saved time learning, money on licensing, and so much more just to go with something the team already knew. Though, there is no denying that the Frostbite engine is simply stunning with Anthem. Worth the headaches though? I really don't think so. This is the chief reason for the mess of bugs we've been dealing with since the beta, as, quote, "Frostbite is like an in-house engine with all the problems that entails its poorly documented, hacked together, and so on, with all the problems of externally sourced engine." So I can give the team some slack for the issues that we've been dealing with, as they've been enduring Frostbite when the Unreal Engine would have been a better choice in my opinion. Apparently, quote, "The engine allowed them to build big, beautiful levels, but it just wasn't equipped with the tools to support all the ambitious prototypes they had created. Slowly and gradually, they started cutting back on the environmental and survival features, in the large part because they just weren't working." And man, does that hit me hard. Anthem could have been so much more like we saw in E3 2017 had it not been for this disastrous engine. Maybe in a few years things will improve for Anthem as the team learns how to work with Frostbite, but I sincerely doubt we will be seeing cut content or mechanics returning such as the survival feature or the Shaper Storms anytime soon. Though things only got worse, and I can't imagine how things were at the studio, especially with this quote by a dev. "If it takes you a week to make a little bug fix, it discourages people from fixing bugs." And this wasn't even the worst of it. Experienced engineers working on Anthem who were familiar with the Frostbite engine were moved over to FIFA in 2016 to help the game be developed and pushed out the door, as the franchise is a cash cow for EA. Jason puts it best when he says, "Frostbite's razor blades were buried deep inside the Anthem team, and it would prove impossible to stop the bleeding." If you're a looter shooter veteran like me, you must have asked yourself at least a dozen times, if not more, why hasn't Anthem learned from Destiny, or hell, even The Division? Well, apparently even mentioning Destiny in the studio was taboo, which brings up more questions. I get it, you don't want to end up with a Destiny clone, but why don't you learn from their mistakes? Especially The Divisions, which is now a prime example of what the genre should be because they learn from their own mistakes. Crafting is meaningful, loot is plentiful, and so on. I genuinely don't get it. It reminds me of Anchor 654 and my favorite character, Grand Admiral Thrawn. To defeat an enemy, you must know them. Not simply their battle tactics, but their history, philosophy, art. It seems like BioWare's leadership just flat out ignored so many of the things that plagued these games for ages, and with Anthem releasing when a disdain for incomplete games and Destiny/Division level mistakes was at a high, you'd think that they'd do some soul searching. Can't blame the limitations of the Frostbite engine on this entirely. When your core mechanics are flawed and your people tell you that they are flawed, you have a problem. During the Christmas of 2016, a take-home build was made, and even EA executive Patrick Soderlund got his hands on it. According to him, it was not like anything that BioWare had promised, and it was pretty bad. The game he was given to test didn't have any flight capabilities, as it was brought in and out so many times during development, and you would just run around and shoot aliens. And apparently the graphics were poor as well. What's more, Patrick sent high-level BioWare personnel to Stockholm, Sweden, to the DICE headquarters to meet and learn from them, even sending a strike team to help make Anthem's graphical dilemma better. Many on Reddit are apparently heralding EA as the saviors of Anthem. Yeah, the saviors from a gameplay and mechanical perspective maybe, but a lot of this was due in no small part to the purgatory that is the Frostbite engine they imposed on BioWare in the first place. Apparently, in early 2017, Patrick returned to BioWare to give it a beta test. The flight mechanics were implemented, and it became a selling point for the E3 2017 trailer a few weeks later. Do you all remember at the beginning when Jason stated that Edmonton and Austin were in a conflict with each other? Well, here you go. Quote, "Anthem is the game that you get from a studio that is at war with itself," said one former BioWare developer. Edmonton, understandably, has the perspective of, "We are the original BioWare. Anyone not part of that brand is lesser," and does not not garner the same level of trust as people that are in the Edmonton office. And so I think that's a little bit of the issue there. This sort of shocked and dropped my world. Shocked because I always envisioned BioWare as this big happy family of incredible storytellers and designers. If anything, this article has proven two things to me. The BioWare I grew up with is gone. And this explains so much. There was a lack of vision, a lack of understanding, hell, even a misunderstanding about what Anthem truly is between the two studios, which led to even more fracturing and misunderstandings. Plus, with two studios, BioWare Austin and BioWare Edmonton, working from different countries and two different cultures, I can't imagine things were ever as hunky-dory as we were led to believe. And apparently, things only got worse from there. Imagine that. With the unfortunate passing of the incredible Corey Gasper, and with features such as loading and saving not even being fully realized in June, how were they going to launch a game in 2018? You all remember the drama of BioWare shifting resources and people from franchises such as Dragon Age, SWTOR, and Andromeda, correct? Well, one of the most specific and amazing reasons why Anthem even launched in the state that it did, and not worse, was because of Mark Dara, industry veteran and god amongst men in BioWare. I don't believe it was EA that saved Anthem. It wasn't EA that saved Anthem, as a matter of fact. It was Dara. Dara pushed the team to complete what they had started, moving things on to the next stage, and essentially building an arc with your bare hands. Despite this, come 2018, Anthem only had a single mission primed and ready to go. Ready to go might be a bit of a stretch. Another developer's quote really hit me hard, which was divulged to Jason. Quote, "They talk a lot about the 6-year development time, but really the core gameplay loop, the story, and all the missions in the game were made in the last 12 to 16 months because of the lack of vision and total lack of leadership across the board. EA slowly but surely funneled more and more resources into Anthem's development, and according to many, it was one of the most successful years in BioWare's history, albeit stressful and dangerous for mental health. I cannot give enough praise and credit to Tal Peleg and the rest of the animation team. I can remember so specifically, close to October or November of last year, Ben Irving shared a picture of Tal working on cutscenes that appeared to occur very early on in the game. I can specifically recall telling my friend GRIMSLINGER that this seemed a little bit odd to be working on something as detailed and crucial to a BioWare game as animation and cinematics so late in development. Despite it, they did an absolutely top-notch job, though this came at a literal price. Mocap isn't cheap, which is primarily what the main cast was doing when they weren't recording lines for things like Strongholds where you wouldn't see facial animations. This would often require them to only have one take, as the budget would only allow them for that much time. And that's pretty difficult if you've ever acted before. Just months before launch, things still weren't finalized. Testing couldn't happen due to server crashes and errors. Last-minute additions were being made, and at this point in the article, my heart cracked as I read about developers leaving in droves. So many talented people leaving because of the stress, conditions, and mismanagement on Anthem. I really could barely breathe. I had to back away and take a break from reading. Drew Karpyshyn and Neil Thompson's departures specifically. Quote, "Under Dara and the production staff, there was real momentum, but it became clear to everyone that the game wouldn't ship with as much content as fans expected." I won't even get into the part of the article that has the challenges of the Legionnaires. I'll leave that for you all to read through. Though, I will say this, it significantly pissed me off. Schreier states that, quote, "If there was one reason for BioWare staff to be optimistic, it was the fact that unlike the studio's previous games, Anthem had room to evolve. Early mock reviews, critical assessments provided by outside consultants, predicted that Anthem's Metacritic score would land in the high 70s. But we all know how that ended. The betas had remarkable issues, and we were sure that they were just a result of millions of people playing as opposed to small teams at BioWare, which I now doubt the legitimacy of. These issues existed, and they put forth a beta with these issues. They had no choice. They had made promises, and as a publicly traded company, they had to push forth the product that they had promised, especially a beta. From there, they had to do damage control, and I don't know, the price of transparency has been brought up a number of times, and it seems like the transparency may have been a lie. I'm not sure. I'll reserve judgment until I can get some final facts. I had played a build in February thanks to the EA Game Changers program that ran infinitely better than either of the betas, to which I even made promises that the betas were not representative of what Anthem would be at launch from my experience. Then February 15th rolled along. I played for maybe 3 hours that morning before I calmly put down my headset, powered off my PC, and went back to bed. Since then, a lot of that magic I once had for Anthem has been gone. Ultimately, BioWare ran out of time. EA had them slated to boost their end of fiscal year numbers, and they couldn't push the release back any further. Maybe if they had until the end of the first quarter of the new fiscal year, things could have been different, but woulda, coulda, and shoulda. BioWare has since responded, acknowledging the difficulties of development and taking full accountability for their developers. This was not, however, a listed response to the statements made by the 19-some-odd developers on Anthem or BioWare. It's a vague response, but admirable nonetheless. I will leave a link to this article in the description below. If this Kotaku article by Jason Schreier has proven anything to me, it is that game development is nothing like what it appears to be on the outside. There is discontent with everything and everything you do, but I never believed that it could be at this level, especially with a company like BioWare. I had a phone call with Grim yesterday and we discussed this very article. The BioWare we knew is now gone, we both agreed. But that doesn't mean a new one can't rise up from the ashes. They just need to learn from this mistake and realize that magic that BioWare had is gone, in terms of being able to pull everything together in the last few months. By all accounts, it seems that BioWare Austin is in near full control of Anthem, which gives me some hope for the future of the game. No longer will there be a two-studio divide, but Anthem has so many challenges ahead of itself without any doubt. As for me, I've been bombarded by questions, comments, and concerns about this article, and in all honesty, I'm drained at the time of making this video. I was supposed to be taking the week off for personal reasons, you can check my Twitter as to why, but I felt like I had to make this video. Your Anthem isn't going anywhere. Anthem isn't going anywhere, and I'm certainly not going anywhere. I have every bit of faith that Anthem will eventually become the game that we have always wanted it to be, but whether that takes the form of a few months or a few years remains to be seen. For those of you who say it can't recover, well, just look at The Division, For Honor, Warframe, Destiny, Battlefront 2, and so on. There is hope for Anthem. It's just going to take time. And for any of the developers who might be listening to this, we appreciate all of you fantastic freelancers for everything you have done, endured, and will do. My only hope is that conditions have improved or will improve for you all, and you remain in my thoughts and prayers as always. But what are your thoughts on this story? Has your opinion of Anthem shifted, or are you concerned about something? Let me know in the comment section below, and when I return from my week of rest, I'll be sure to reply. Stay strong, my fantastic freelancer friends, because truly, we are stronger together. Have a good day, everybody.